Welcome to another episode of Collaborator Short on Shorts. I'm Michelle Nunes. To my right, we have Kevin Allen Jackson.
Hello.
Maria Perry.
Hi.
And Brett Erlich.
How do you do? You look really nice today.
You do too.
We all look
That is
nice.
a very sharp shirt.
Thank you. J. Crew, believe it or not.
No way.
Yeah.
You, J. Crew,
How
never.
weird.
That's how I shop
Oh,
once
yeah.
a season. It's like,
Wow.
what's in the sales rack? And this was, and I'm pretty stoked about it. Thanks for noticing.
Yeah. Good job.
Let's see this segue.
Way to find the sales.
Yeah, let's find the segue.
You know, you should be sent
Exactly.
to prison if you don't shop at J. Crew. Speaking of which,
Wow, this guy is the segue master.
Clint Smith,
I never thought you'd
Beyond
get
This Place. Today we review Clint Smith's Beyond This Place. It's a profile piece by Charles Frank introducing us to poet and creative writing teacher Clint Smith. Now, as opposed to just being a simple documentary shoot involving a stationary interview, Frank and Smith take us through a visual and emotional journey of what Smith's students, a class full of prison inmates, there's the tie-in to You Should Be Sent to Prison, experienced, and I made so much light of it, and this is a very serious piece about their life behind bars, so I apologize. The poem showcased in the film was written and narrated by Smith himself. So you chose this, you liked it?
I loved it.
Okay, for what reasons?
Well, first of all, I thought that the poem at the end was so beautiful, and it kind of made me realize some of my own assumptions I have about people in prison. Like, there was one particular line that just like knocked me over. And you know, when you have those kind of like goosebump moments when you're watching films, at least for me, those are the ones I want to share.
Do you remember what line it was?
Yeah. What was
Yes,
the line?
I do. It was where the totality of their personhood has become diluted to a single act, that they have become singularly defined by the worst thing that they have ever done. And I thought about that and thought about what it would be like, you know, just for me to have that experience. Like, that's what a terrible reality to face.
Yes.
Because we all have weaknesses and we all have flaws and we all have done things that we deeply regret. And so it was that particular line that made me want to
And
share
I
it with you
so wish that I had met some of the people who were living with that regret.
Right. This video, this film could have done so much more, not necessarily making me meet those people,
Right.
which I wanted to do. I
Right.
thought as soon as we started getting into it, I'm like, oh, we're going to sit in on this class,
Right.
which sounds like a very compelling subject for a documentary.
I was very excited at first.
Not slow motion chalkboard writing of a guy talking about how awesome he feels as a result of doing this and his way too long poem.
Well,
Yeah,
it's a good thing that I talked to Charles, Frank.
Really?
Yes, because we talked about this exact issue, the fact that there was no actual footage in the prison.
Tell me more.
Oh, we can. And so I was wondering, for you as a filmmaker, did you run into issues that led to you having to find creative solutions, or was that an intention from the start of the film?
Yeah, I think there definitely were issues. Like the initial thought, the obvious approach was kind of like, yeah, let's see if we can film in a prison and see what one of these, lessons kind of looks like. But there were some issues with getting access and that being a viable option. That said, kind of that constraint forced us to think about how we could represent his experience in a different way.
Yeah, I actually thought that it worked really well having it just be him. I was trying to imagine what it would be like to have solidified the inmates by, actually showing them. And I thought, I'm not sure if you needed it.
He was telling me that when he was teaching the class, it was hard for him because he wasn't allowed to take any of the writings of the inmates out of the prison with him.
Wow.
So he was kind of left with these memories and these ideas and
Wow.
these experiences, but he had to sort of just carry them in his mind. And so when he wrote the poem, it was kind of this translation of his experience from in the prison and what he could remember and his way of sort of expressing their voice through something else. So yeah, it ended up, I think, working out pretty well because our film similarly was just a translation of Clint's experiences, but not like a direct kind of like exact interpretation. It was a little bit more abstract.
Yeah, I definitely appreciated that.
I'm not interested in him.
You're interested.
I'm interested in the prisoners.
But I thought that the poem, but it wasn't necessarily about the prisoners. It was about what you learned by having that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I I used to teach screenwriting, and when people would give feedback on scripts, I would tell them you have to be really careful not to tell someone else how you would write their story, because that's not really useful, right? And in a classroom setting, that's absolutely true. But when you're talking about someone else's work, it's a little bit more fair game. I still hate to do it. I still hate to say this is not the movie that I would have made, because who the fuck cares what I would have done, right? But I have to say that when you have this text on screen that says he had this experience with these inmates, you're expecting that to be the movie, right?
Yeah,
Instead
they
of
just set us up for this colossal, like, where is it?
Yeah.
Where's the beef?
And I get it. I mean, look, I get that, you run into problems with production and you do what you can. And I salute them for doing what they could,
Yeah.
right? Maybe this was the best he could do with the resources that he had.
It was, sorry.
But I will just say that and by the way, I can only say this because it was a pretty well-made movie,
Yeah.
right? As a cinematic experience, it was disappointing because the story that I was led to believe I was going to be told is not what was told.
But it was a profile piece on Clint Smith, and it was actually made, and we talk about this if you guys want to watch the full interview. The video was commissioned by a conference where Clint Smith was actually speaking, and they asked Charles to, work with him to create a piece that kind of showed the audience that was going to be at the conference who Clint Smith is and what he does. And so you guys want like the follow-up documentary, but this was supposed to be about Clint Smith. Did you learn about who he is?
Yeah, he's a guy who writes poems that are too long and have 3 really great lines in them.
I feel like without
That was so good.
Yeah,
I
sorry.
feel like without contextualizing it, it does feel really almost self-centered and self-serving.
Yeah.
Knowing that it was supposed to be like a biopic, basically.
Right.
Just,
That's
better.
I agree. So I'm a little confused because I thought that he didn't set out to make this movie about these prisoners and then had to make
I think
it
they
about
wanted
him?
no. When I said they ran into issues, they still wanted to somehow maybe get into the prison to have that relationship shown on camera between Clint and his students.
Okay.
But they didn't get that.
This is the work. The more I think about it, the more angry it makes me.
What?
It's like people who
He
go
needed a
like,
really good
like
producer.
Brazil. Oh, I went to the Olympics and I went to the favelas, and these people were in terrible, terrible places, and I found it so interesting. Here are the photos of me in those places where people are dying. It's like, no,
that.
show me the people's struggles. Like I want to see it, or don't show me anything at all, because otherwise you just come off as a self-centered person who's doing it for personal growth.
It really did.
He's probably not like that. I wasn't there to interview him, but like I'm saying, and I stand by that. Like the filmmaking sets me up for this terrible disappointment. Because there's such a good story in there.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those things where if he had a really, really strong producer working with him, or if he had maybe vetted the idea in public, like did some sort of polling or something like that, that people would have probably told him that the story here, the really interesting thing, are these people, these convicts in this class.
Not the fact that Clint.
Well, because do you know who Clint Smith is? I mean, I know you know a little bit more now, but
No, I didn't know who he was.
I mean, is he compelling enough? Is he more compelling than convicts who are in a creative writing class?
But when you guys know that this was commissioned to actually introduce Clint Smith to a conference, like, doesn't that make a difference? Seeing the video with that context.
It does, but I'm still like,
it doesn't make it any more entertaining.
But why? Then how come Funky Del Homo Sapien? Like, help me understand the difference between a piece where you're learning about him as a person in that sense, not being.
Del the Funky Homo Sapien is like a icon in like early hip hop.
But maybe Clint Smith is an icon in a spoken word, and we're just not in that.
That's it. I didn't like the Del the Funky Homo Sapien thing. I want to hear him rap. I don't want to hear him talk about learning an ollie. Right. Or if he does, he needs to make a clear connection between the two.
And I
watch that video, by the way.
I mean, and look, I can't speak with any amount of authority about the poetry world, but I would be very surprised if Clint Smith is of the same stature in that world that Del the Funky Homo Sapien is in the rap world. I mean, you're talking about one of the people who started the Oakland underground rap scene, which is a big deal in that world. But anyway, how many shorts?
I'm going to say 1 short, because some of the imagery is 1.5, let's give it 2 shorts because the imagery is very good on its own, and there's a line about a guard tower that is sure of its own importance, and the one line you mentioned. Like those are good. I'll take those away 2 shorts.
Okay.
I'm gonna give it 1 short because the first time I saw it, I just felt it was really self-congratulatory and very self-serving, and also I hate poetry, so.
Okay, I'm going to give it 3 shorts. I think that, the fact that the information about the context makes it a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I think that anything that is being put out there as a piece of entertainment should be able to stand on its own without a context.
Yeah.
So it still falls short, but it is very well made, and the ideas behind it, what it could have been, are so sensational and so important. So I give it a 3. 3 shorts.
And I'm giving it 4 shorts. It didn't get 5 for me because even though I understand why they didn't end up using any footage inside the prison, I think that would have just made it for me, made it the top. So I'm giving it 4.
So that's 2.5 shorts.
How many shorts do you believe this film deserves? Give us.
Be fair.
Yeah, be fair but firm. Give us your thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe to this channel, and we'll all see you next time on Short on Shorts.
Bye-bye.
Be sure to click the link below, the other link, so that you can see the interview between me and Charles Frank, where you learn a little bit more about his process in creating the film Clint Smith Beyond This Place.